And welcome into the Week 4 Countdown Show, Part Uno. I'm your host, Ian Power, joined as always by Matt Vitale and Frankie Santiago, bringing you guys the fantasy knowledge of how to attack this slate. It's an interesting one. Speaking of interesting ones, the great segue into the beer of the week. I've had this stout before, so I'm gonna let Frankie. I assume you've had this before as well. So Vitale, as the only person here who has not tried this before, how do you like the dragon's milk? Also, show off the. Seeing as this is your beer, show off the bottle.
I walked into the beer store up by my work, and there was a giant dragon display. So I was like, you know what? They paid money for the display, and it's got a funny name called Dragon's Milk. So I said, let's give it a try.
I will say I've never had it warm, which is how you're drinking it.
Yeah.
I've always had it very chilled.
Actually, funny that you say that because I typically recommend that you have stouts warm.
I always like stouts cold.
Well, this one a little bit less so because there's not as much, spice and like extra stuff in there. It's pretty clean and just got the bourbon aging on it.
Sure.
But with stuff that has all that kind of extra stuff and that spice, it's going to show a lot better if it's warmer.
Comes right at you.
To quote, this is an 11% stout, so to quote Dave Chappelle, it'll get you drunk. But you can only drink like 3 of these, and then you drank a whole loaf of bread, and you're full, and you go to sleep.
Yeah.
So, not exactly a summer crusher, as Frankie would call it.
Challenge accepted.
Do you feel attacked?
No, but I'm gonna take that challenge on.
Yeah, go ahead and crush these. I would love to see it.
I wouldn't because we have a show to film, and we have half a slate to go through. But maybe after if you wanted to shotgun a few of these. Moving on from there to the news, because there is quite a bit of it today. DeAndre Swift, groin, limited in practice. Not really worried about him. He's been limited in practice every single practice so far this season. He has played at a very high level. I believe he's a running back 5 on the year so far.
I think he's like 4. Actually, I think he's the 3.
I think it depends on format.
It does depend on format, but I also did see Dan Campbell saying you're going to see a lot more of Swift. I guess how he said that in a press.
It's almost like this guy that I know. I can't remember if Frankie was on him. I know you hated him all off. It's almost like this very talented running back that's one of the only options on this Lions team, which is what I was touting all offseason, is going to be good just by workload and because Dan Campbell thinks it's still 1984.
I mean, like I said, as I talked about earlier, like the Lions, they look more legit than I thought. I thought they were going to be the dumpster, like Jacksonville. Like Jacksonville this year, that's what I thought they were going to be.
Well, we'll talk about the Lions a little more because they are going to be on this episode. So let's hold off on the Swift talk too much until we get to there. But that is not a concern for me unless he somehow aggravates it in practice.
Yep.
The next one is a concern. Dalvin Cook with his ankle was limited in practice today. Obviously, limited is better than did not practice, but he is just coming off of a game in which he did not play after Mike Zimmer said that they were going to roll him out. They're hurt. It sounds so dumb when you say it like that.
Yeah.
So this is one to monitor in case they decide to give him a little more rest to get that ankle right again. Obviously, Madison looked great last week, so that they may very well do that. Much to the chagrin of Dalvin Cook managers. Hopefully you are rostering Madison in case of him not being out there. Couple of Cook's teammates, Conklin, did not practice today with an elbow and a glute. So another one to watch out for because that's multiple injuries. He didn't practice, and he was a popular waiver ad for tight end after he had a pretty decent week. And then Adam Thielen was a DNP with a non-injury. This is not expected to keep him out of the game on Sunday, so monitor it just in case a one-day DNP non-injury becomes a longer one. I didn't see it listed what it was, so just assume personal time. He took some PTO or something. I don't know, but. So always good to keep an eye on it in case you have to end up missing a game like Will Fuller did week 2. Odell Beckham Jr., shoulder limited in practice. Once again, not particularly worried about this. He just played. He was limited last week too. If he ends up being a game time decision for some reason, worth keeping an eye on, but expect Odell to play. Carson Wentz, as I was talking to Frankie about pre-show, I think this is actually the first time that I've actually seen someone listed with ankles, not ankle. Like in all my years of playing fantasy football, going on 11 years now, I don't think I've ever seen another player have ankles. You would think it would have come up at least once.
Yeah, usually you see like ankle. Like the worst I've seen is like usually like, the same leg. It's like ankle, knee, thigh. It's just like the whole leg is destroyed.
Just cut the leg off.
Yeah.
Carson Wentz was limited in practice. He obviously also played this past week. So, barring any setbacks, expect him to be a full go this week. Jonathan Taylor with a knee was limited in practice. Not particularly worried about that one either. Will Fuller cannot stay off the injury report after being banged up in the preseason, missing game 1 with suspension, game 2 with a non-injury related game miss. Played this past week, started to get worked into the Dolphins offense. Now he is not practicing with a chest and an elbow. So, Will Fuller, like the McRib, is very fragile and only available for a limited time only. Get him out there while you can, because it seems like Will Fuller's back to his old non-HGH using ways. T. Higgins with a shoulder is officially out for Thursday's game. So have a backup plan in place for Mr. Higgins. He will not be scoring points for you tomorrow. And then Christian McCaffrey, hammy, DNP. We all expected that. Rounding out this list with some NFC East players. Can I just say all of the Giants are not practicing? Because
basically.
Yeah. The only obviously the Giants didn't hold a practice today, which not great as it is because they are playing Sunday and it's Wednesday.
I mean, they probably also look like they need the practice.
Yeah. I mean, like Galladay, DNP, hip. Darius Slayton, DNP, hammy. Shepard, DNP, hammy. Barkley, limited, knee. I don't know. I guess start Barkley and Evan Ingram this week. It feels weird to recommend Evan Ingram, but this Giants team is just they're all trying to be injured at the same time. None of them want to have to be on the field, which I kind of get. I wouldn't want to play for the New York Giants either.
I feel like we're kind of getting I'm getting a little bit of deja vu with last year, where I feel like we kind of been desensitized to all these injuries. Like we see fantasy injuries like all the time, but last year was special in the sense that everybody was just getting hurt.
I mean, this seems more in line with what we usually get. I think, if anything, this year it's been weird in that we've seen a lot of rib injuries this year.
Yeah.
Like, this has been the year of the ribs.
Yeah, but it's like, I feel like I'm not as shocked by some of the injuries I'm hearing about. I'm just like, I mean, we talked about this a little bit yesterday too. It's like, it's players that never usually get injured that are getting injured.
No, a lot of the people on this list are oftentimes on this list.
Oh, well, no. It's also that too is the thing.
Like DeAndre Swift, Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen, Odell Beckham, Carson Wentz, Will Fuller, CMC, Galladay, Barkley, Shepard. All of them have had extensive injury histories. And then I'll round out the list with some good news here. Curtis Samuel was activated from the IR and did practice today. So that's a sign of moving in the right direction for that Washington football team. I think the only people who are not happy about this news are probably Terry McLaurin managers, because obviously this is some volume that will not be going in his direction.
Yeah.
Any news that you guys want to bring up that I did not mention?
No, that's about it.
Okay, let's dive into this slate here. Before we start addressing the Thursday game, if you aren't already following us on social media or subscribed to the YouTube channel, and I know some of you aren't because I can see the viewership numbers and they are not all from subscribers. So,
I can see you.
I'm watching you. I'm like Santa Claus, but with
drink a whole case of milk stout and come over.
I'm like Santa Claus, but with an algorithm.
All right, let's not threaten our subscribers, guys.
I'm not threatening them. I'm just saying that I'm looking at the algorithm results, and I know that there are some people who aren't subscribed but are still watching the videos. Hit that notification bell, hit the subscribe button. Make sure to follow us on Twitter. That's where you can shoot us, questions about lineup decisions, start sits, trade questions, anything above. What our favorite beers are, why Frankie has so many shoes, anything.
He has a lot of feet.
Yes, he has many. You can't see it because you can only see his torso, but Frankie has at least 11 feet.
I'm basically an octopus.
Yeah.
I didn't say capitellar, but sure.
Yeah, I was thinking capitellar there. All right, let's dive into this slate here. First game on the docket.
An electric one.
So I think this game's gonna be better than people are because it's two gross teams on paper, but I think this game is at least going to have some fantasy value. That's why I say I think it's going to be better than people expect it to be. Cincinnati Bengals are hosting the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's a 46-point total. The Bengals are 7.5-point home favorites. So, not a lot of offense expected for this Jacksonville team here. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence has been a turnover machine to this point in the season. Has a negative interception to touchdown ratio. Generational talent, by the way. As far as the quarterbacks go in this one, obviously the total is fine for streaming. 46 points is that's a middle to middle high-ish total. Are you guys starting Joe Burrow or Trevor Lawrence?
Personally, I did pick up Joe Burrow in case Herbert's hand was an issue for me. But seeing as this game's on Thursday, I'm less inclined to do it.
I think there's better streamers out there. I'll say that.
Yeah, Joe Burrow just hasn't really performed he hasn't really put in any games that's shown you confidence in starting him as your streamer. Thursday's usually not a high scoring affair. They've been getting it done without the use of that, and I do see with the amount of turnovers that Jacksonville's been producing that the defense is going to be causing short yardage and maybe even some pick six, fumble sixes. So
we do love our home defenses against bad offenses on Thursday games.
Yep, I made sure I had them basically everywhere I could.
Running back room, Joe Mixon's an auto start. You do not sit him. What are you guys doing with the Jacksonville running backs? Are you starting James Robinson or Carlos Hyde?
With the lack of running backs, I'll probably start. I'm fine with flexing Robinson this week.
He is coming off a good game.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat.
And then I think because we're going to skip the tight end room for this one because neither team has any, unless you are a big believer in Dan Arnold, newly traded to the Jacksonville Jaguars. There's no tight end to speak of in this game. For the wide receiver room, obviously no T. Higgins in this one. It looks like Tyler Boyd is expected to play. Jamar Chase is expected to play. Jacksonville side of the ball, Marvin Jones, DJ Chark, Laviska Shenault. They're all going to be out there. Who you starting? Who you sitting in this one?
If I really need it, the only one. So on this one, I'll start Boyd. I'll start Chase. Higgins if it becomes available.
Well, he's officially out.
Yeah. So if something happens, if they're just oh my God, his bones are all better now. But I'm just saying he's a start if he's out there. But clearly he's already been ruled out. So no luck there. Jacksonville side of the ball, I am probably sitting everybody. Maybe Marvin Jones as a start just because he has that long ball touchdown upside that he's always had, and but other than that, I'm not really excited to start him. Vishka was the darling that everyone was looking for to break out here with an upgraded QB, and we just haven't seen that yet. So he's riding the pine until I see it.
Frankie, are you doing anything differently?
Nope, same boat. We've talked about this before. Marvin Jones is pretty much the only piece of this Jacksonville offense you want to own, as far as any players. Maybe James Robinson because running back's so shallow, but other than that, it's start your Bengals that are going to get targets, and that's pretty much it. If I need a wide receiver, Marvin Jones is fine.
Sure. All right, let's jump to the next one here, and what I think is going to be a much more exciting matchup. Kansas City, excuse me. Sorry to frog my throat there. Kansas City Chiefs are going to Philadelphia to visit the Philadelphia Eagles. In a 54-point total, the Eagles are 7-point home dogs. Yikes. Can't say I'm surprised after how they played against Dallas this past week. We're going to skip past the quarterbacks in this one because obviously both quarterbacks in this matchup are in play. Patrick Mahomes gets you lots of points. Jalen Hurts gets you lots of points. I think I am most interested in the running backs for this one because on both sides of the ball, we have seen disappointing showings from CEH and Miles Sanders. I think Kenneth Gainwell is officially just a sit and stash for now. Would you guys agree?
Yeah.
What are you guys doing with CEH and Miles Sanders this week?
CEH, I think he earned last week to be rolled out there. He at least broke 100 yards and he looked okay, but it's going to be a little bit tough for him, tough sledding out there with this Eagles front seven. But I think there's enough points scored, and you invested so highly in him that he's at least a flex for you. Like I say, he's just one of those ones that you're kind of rolling out there and lowering your expectations. Miles, I'm probably also rolling him out there just because of the high total here, and he at
He
least
did average 13.5 yards per carry last week.
Yeah, I don't expect that to continue. Otherwise, he'll be the best running back ever. But no, I think you roll both of them out there with basically they're kind of the same running back, at least how I'm looking at them if they're on my team. Rolling them out there, lowered expectation.
Yeah, I think that I'm comfortable rolling Sanders out there. CH for me is, he looked good last week, and the running back Eckler against Kansas City last week looked really good. And Miles Sanders, while I don't think he's as good as Eckler, I think that he's capable of putting up that yardage and putting up those fantasy points for. I think I wouldn't say he has a super high ceiling, but I'm kind of trusting him to have a little bit of a floor here.
So you're not worried about his so far this season. Because I bring this up because Miles Sanders has looked bad against everyone that is in Atlanta so far this year. Atlanta, obviously, he had a 17-point game in full point PPR. Mm-hmm. Against San Francisco, a team you can run on, he posted 6.9 full point PPR points. And then against Dallas, he posted 8.5. And they obviously completely abandoned the run last week. You guys aren't worried about Philadelphia's offensive woes at all with Sanders?
No.
For me personally, he's a bench.
Okay. Like I said, I think you invested highly enough in him. The running back room is so shallow. I wouldn't hate if someone could showed me who they're going to start over him. There's definitely some plays out there you can get over him that you might have been able to draft later, like a Chase Edmonds, a Darrell Henderson if he plays this week. Mm-hmm. There's definitely plays over him. I just think there's such a lack right now of running back and this total's high enough where I can see him connecting on enough plays to save his fantasy week.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he is depending on who else you have on your team start. He's not a locked-in starter for you.
Yeah, usually that's always my approach here. So when I'm talking about guys that are on the lower end side, if you can just have two locked-in running backs and you're just deep at receiver, I think that's the play you go with.
Cool. Wide receivers, obviously you're starting Tyreek Hill here. You're starting Devonta Smith. Are you starting anyone behind them? Jalen Reagor, Mecole Hardman, Quez Watkins?
Probably. For me, it's probably not. I don't trust Mecole Hardman enough. And granted, they gave up we'll just say a shit ton of points to the Cowboys. I think that this Chiefs offense kind of looks out of sorts, and they're still trying to figure out what they want to do other than throw the ball to Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill.
Sure.
So for me, Hardman's not a start. Those two other guys, though, they're fine. I'm fine with them.
Yeah. Picking Mahomes' favorite receiver that isn't Tyreek Hill is basically a lottery pick at this point. It could just randomly be a Pringle week.
Until Josh Gordon gets into the offense.
Oh, yeah, of course. Then he's the new number one receiver.
Tyreek who?
Exactly. Tyreek has been kind of bad these past 2 weeks. For a guy you probably paid a first rounder for, or at least
opposing teams seem like they're just focusing on trying to remove him and having Patrick Mahomes beat them with Travis Kelce.
And I'm sure if you have Travis Kelce, you're loving that. But at the end of the day, if this offense wants to be able to produce and actually be the caliber of team it should be, and not 1 and 2, they're going to need to figure out how to get him involved because he's clearly a critical piece to this offense.
Tight end, obviously Travis Kelce is a start.
Maybe.
Which tight end, or both of them, if you guys are on both of them, which or either are you starting from the Eagles side of the ball? Goddard and Ertz have both looked involved to this point.
Just from the Eagles standpoint of clearly they wanted to move on with Ertz. I have more confidence in Goddard.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
Okay, so Ertz is a sit for both of you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, easy enough. I can't say I disagree there. Outside of last week where he had that 7 targets, he had 2 targets a game. Yeah. So Ertz is definitely a desperation play in my eyes. Jump into the next game on the slate here. The Tennessee Titans are going to visit the New York Jets in a 44-point total. The Jets are also 7-point home dogs, to the surprise of no one. They would probably be even larger home dogs if it wasn't for the fact that the Titans are going in there without any of their wide receivers.
Can I just say I hate this game?
You clearly don't have Derrick Henry anywhere.
Yes.
Derrick Henry managers are drooling at this.
He does have him as his money pick this week,
I do have him as my money pick. I still can hate the game. I'm looking at it as just an actual better and just being like, this is one of the grossest game I've ever seen, especially with their, like, now that we're learning that their wide receiver options are probably out for Tennessee.
So, do we just want to skip talking about this one? Because honestly, I'm looking at the list of players in this. There's like you don't sit Derrick Henry, so there's nothing to discuss there. I think the only question here is Corey Davis, because if both the Titans receivers are out in redraft, I'm not starting any of the backups.
Yeah, I'm not starting any of the quarterbacks. Neither team's shown any confidence in their tight end. And wide receiver wise, I mean, you're gonna have just, like I said, it's gonna be a lotto pick to figure out which Titans wide receiver gets any looks, if any.
Well, I mean, Chester Rogers and Nick Westbrook-Akeen, I think I pronounced that correctly. Both have looked okay so far this year. Those are probably the next two guys up if AJ Brown and Julio Jones are out of this tilt. But I don't see even against the Jets, I don't see the upside there for them. This just smells like they're going to give it to Derrick Henry 400 times and grind the Jets to dust.
Yeah. Speaking of Corey Davis, though, I actually
he's a start for me.
Yeah, I like Corey Davis a lot because the Titans have looked. I mean, they're kind of like the Chiefs in a way where
they are the 32nd ranked passing defense.
I was going to say they looked out of sorts and they kind of feel like they don't know what to do other than hand the ball to Derrick Henry. But yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, I mean,
there is no one worse than them at defending the pass in football right now. They are the 32nd ranked defense against wide receivers in fantasy.
Their defense has looked bad, and we figured it was going to take a step up with them having a defensive-minded coach and the offense just being very simple and just run it with Derrick Henry. But figured they just either didn't get the right guys in the offseason or just their offensive coordinator is just not scheming it up right. But I don't know what it is with them, but this one I don't like. I couldn't even call the ball on this one. Like, it should just be the Titans easily just running, like literally running to a victory here. But I could see them with such a bad defense just not being able to produce enough points that the Jets squeak a win out here.
Oh, I think that the Titans win this game handily just because they have no answer for Derrick Henry, and Zach Wilson likes to give the ball to the other team. Let's jump to the next matchup here. It's gonna be another ugly one. Yeah. Next matchup on the slate, the Houston Texans are headed to Buffalo in a 47-point total. The Bills are more than 2 touchdown, 16-point home favorites. 16 points. Vegas is basically predicting a shutout. I'm fine with you just sitting all of your Texans. Maybe you start Brandon Cooks because of the insane target volume he's been getting, but like Brandon Cooks is the only guy on this Texans team, and the Bills defense is going to know that this could easily be a game where he gets like 14 targets and 3 catches because he's just triple covered all day.
Yeah, this is. I mean, we saw what Buffalo did last week, and this is kind of what I was talking about in the waiver show, where, you know, I went out to try and get Dawson Knox, and he's one of my money picks this week too, because they just spread the ball around so much. If this is a week where you need like a Hail Mary play, throw anyone from Buffalo that's like not like anyone, but anybody who's been getting targets in your flex, and just you're probably going to get a touchdown.
Yeah, Beasley, Sanders, Dawson Knox, I think they're all fine plays this week.
Yeah. This one, I honestly like. I think this is going to be another one where the Bills try and put up a lot of points because they now have to kind of prove. Like, I feel like they're still like people aren't yet taking them seriously because they lost week 1 to a terrible Steelers team. They beat a team without their head or their main quarterback in the Dolphins, and then they finally had their statement game last week.
But it was against the Washington football team.
It was against the Washington football team.
But don't worry, the Houston Texans, that's going to be the game that makes everyone believe in them.
Yeah.
Do these guys kind of smell like the Steelers from last year where they were just beating up on bad competition?
We'll see when they play someone serious. Like that's the only way I'm going to look at it because honestly, I think this is, as much as it is you can really throw any receiving option out there, I think this is going to be another bad game for Stephon Diggs. I think it's another game that if he doesn't get a touchdown, he might get game scripted out. And honestly, I like both of their Buffalo Bills running backs. I think they could easily both get 12, 13 carries, a couple out of the backfield, and both be just punching it in. So,
yeah, I mean, Zach Moss has been moving up my rankings. He's someone who I think is a pretty good flex starter this week. I would start Zach Moss over Miles Sanders.
Like I said, I'm kind of like cautiously optimistic with Zach Moss right now, just because he is still kind of splitting. He's slowly taking over this backfield, but I just see like there's a lot of upside for him this game because he could just come out with 2 touchdowns because they're just like, well, we don't want Josh Allen running in a blowout, so just send the running backs out there to finish this game out. So yeah, I think they're going to be the biggest benefactor of this game.
All right, next game on the slate, we are looking at the New York Football Giants going to the Big Easy to visit the New Orleans Saints in a... Ooh, this might be the lowest total on the slate. It's tied for lowest total on the slate.
Yes.
I thought it was going to be the lowest total. That's too bad. But it is very close to the bottom. 42-point total. Saints are 7-point home favorites here. Man. We are missing like all of the fantasy relevant options in this game. You start Saquon Barkley, you start Alvin Kamara. Are you starting? I know my answer to this, but are you guys considering either of the quarterbacks in this gross total game?
No.
Nope.
Okay. Are you considering any Giants or Saints that aren't named Saquon Barkley or Alvin Kamara?
I am mulling over in my head whether I start Kenny G because I feel like he's getting like held out as like the veteran here, so I could see that he's going to be a go for this game. I feel like Sterling and Slayton are going to be out, which just gives more targets that can go Kenny's way. My fear is that Marshawn Lattimore is another week healthy.
Yeah.
So even if Kenny plays, I feel like he could just get blanketed and get just put up a goose.
What about Evan Ingram in this one?
I mean, I think since tight end's a crapshoot, there's probably better options out there. I mean,
you aren't thinking that Ingram's going to be a massive benefactor of all these guys missing, and he could see just a huge just end up as a fantasy success for the week because he gets a bucket of targets.
He could. If they're not there, I could see the defense shifting a little bit to key in on him just because he's a known threat.
Sure.
But the other problem is that he has a just chronic case of the drops. Like, he could get a bucket of targets. We could see him with 12 targets, and he'll catch 3 or 4 balls.
He did have his fingers surgically replaced with sticks of butter.
It's pretty bad.
All right, well, you know what? Let's go try and find some plus matchups here on this slate. Next one up is the Dallas Cowboys and the Carolina Panthers. Is a matchup that I am personally much more interested in because, so far this Carolina team has looked legit. We did see them stutter pretty heavily when CMC went down. Before they started picking it back up again. Obviously, DJ Moore benefited heavily from there being no Christian McCaffrey. Meanwhile, we just saw this Cowboys team just throttle the Philadelphia Eagles. Their defense was giving up, a lot. The box score at the end looked bad. Jalen Hurts over 300 yards. The Eagles did manage to put some points on the board, but if you were watching the game, you don't. I watched that entire game and I don't remember how Jalen Hurts got to that yardage total. I was like, he's got to be like 150. Holy crap, he has how many yards?
Yeah.
Like, it didn't feel like he was moving the ball at all. That Cowboys defense is one that I'm starting to come around on. As I was mentioning, in the offseason, they might be an improved defense, and they're starting to look like they may actually be a better defense than people have been giving them credit for. How are you guys approaching this game? Obviously, the total is pretty nice here. We are looking at a 50.5 point total. Are you starting Sam Darnold as a streamer in this game? Because obviously you're starting Dak, so that's not a question.
So for me,
there's no Cowboys or sit.
I've considered Sam Darnold as a streamer, but he's very. I think he's either going to do very not bad. I think he's going to have like. I don't see the moon as his ceiling because while the Cowboys we typically keep the middle of the field open because, Parsons has been playing the edge lately.
Sure.
So that's where I think Hurts made a lot of his hay with, he loves his tight ends, the quick receivers going across the middle of the field.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. Eventually, Dallas has to figure it out. And if it's this game, well, I think Sam Darnold has a bad time. Not having Christian McCaffrey is huge because Chuba Hubbard's obviously a super
Tuba.
dunk.
Like Tuba.
Yeah. super downgrade there at running back. And, I mean, I'm off him now just because for all the reasons that you mentioned about this Cowboys defense. I mean, I was shit-talking them at the beginning of the year. I was shit-talking them last week, and they've looked vastly improved. And I think that just because numbers are a little bit skewed because of the numbers from the first couple weeks where we let up a lot of points and yards to Tampa, it's kind of bringing us down. But I think we've started to pull it together, and I don't really trust rolling Sam Darnold out there this week.
What about the Panthers receiving options? Are you obviously rolling out DJ Moore? Mm-hmm. Are you giving Robbie Anderson or Terrace Marshall a look in this game? No tight end to speak of. They traded away Dan Arnold. Obviously, we don't know what they're getting out of Chuba Hubbard from the running back position, so they may have to incorporate those second and third wide receivers now.
Yeah, so just to kind of talk to the Panthers side of the ball, just to holistically. Wide receivers, I'm rolling out DJ. I think this is going to be a great game for him. As you were talking about, they were beating him up over the middle, and that's where he makes his hay. Terrace Marshall, I am comfortable rolling him out there. High total. The Cowboys defense does look better. The Micah Parsons pick is going gangbusters for them, which is something I didn't expect out of Jerry. I figured you'd go with a flash pick with so many like highlight players out there. And
he's a flashy defensive player.
He is. But he's more of like a field general type. Like he's like the smart pick. Usually Jerry goes for the flash. Like Devonta Smith was still out there, I believe, at that pick. So I could see him just being like, all the receivers, make my offense pretty. But
just rub the Eagles' nose in it again. Be like, I got your guy again. Ah!
Yeah, but in this one, I am comfortable rolling Darnold out there just because he has been playing better. I think him and the wide receiver options are clearly starting to gel. And I just think that there is points to be had, and I feel like a lot of the turnovers were. It's like Hurts was still kind of getting used to the system. He's still basically a rookie. I mean, this is his first real year as a starter.
Sure.
So I think Carolina here with a game plan, if they can plan around using DJ more and leaning on the receivers more, I think Darnold should be able to play well.
Okay. Running game. Are we starting Chuba Hubbard here?
Yes.
Okay. Let's jump to the next game on this slate here. 2 games left to talk about on the first half. Detroit Lions are heading to Chicago, the Windy City, to take on the Bears. 42-point total, the other low total on the slate. Lions are somehow not favored in this game. I don't know if the Vegas odds makers were just not watching last week or something, but
yeah, I was going through and just kind of picking some of the games I want to do for a parlay here, and this was one of the easiest, just plus like the underdog picks. I was just like, oh yeah, give me that all day. An offense that can only put up 40 yards of total offense.
As we talked about on the roster show, they had less total yards of offense than Justin Tucker had in one kick.
Yeah, I'm streaming the Lions everywhere this week that I can.
So I think that's an interesting take because of the low total. I'm actually kind of avoiding this game outside of the studs. When you say you're streaming Lions everywhere, obviously DeAndre Swift and TJ Hawkinson are insta-locks in your lineup. You never think about removing them. Who outside of those 2 players on the Lions side of the ball are you realistically starting?
Oh, I meant defense-wise.
Yeah. Oh, you're starting the Lions defense.
Yes.
Okay. I was going to say, no, outside of the main 2, I'm sitting everybody. Just because it's low total. The Bears do have a legit defense. Like I said, I mean, if you go back to the game that they barely won, where it took a defensive touchdown to put them over the top that I talked about in the week 2, countdown, I was like, this defense is literally just breaking their backs to keep them in this game. And when their quarterback play declined even further and the offensive play calling declined even further, they just couldn't handle it.
We've seen this before. The Bears defense comes out looking great, and then when they're constantly on the field, they're like, oh, all right, we can't run anymore.
I am surprised that we haven't heard Khalil Mack complaining about getting off this team.
I think maybe if a certain head coach of the Chicago Bears isn't fired soon, that may start to be a thing.
He, like I said, this is his game. He either fixes it out and they're just like, oh, sorry, it was just like Justin Fields' first game. We had a bad game plan going into it. We weren't ready for it. I mean, it's not a good excuse, but it's an excuse. If they come out here and they look legit against the Lions, I think that saves him at least a couple weeks. If they look trash against the Lions defense and Jared Goff, I think that has to be the fire. Like, you have to fire
both of which you have looked good, by the way.
So Chicago Bears obviously have a lot of high draft capital players on their team. Are we starting? And I'm only saying this half jokingly. Are we starting any of them?
David Montgomery, end of list.
Okay, I can get behind that.
Yep.
And because he at least has the guaranteed volume, provided the offense can stay on the field this time.
And for anybody who's asking about Allen Robinson,
buy low, buy so low.
Look at his numbers.
Do not buy him this week. It's gonna get worse, way worse before it gets better. I got off this team for this team needs to have if the head coach gets
they need Bill Lazor to take over play calling duties.
Right, like I said, they need a shot in the arm to get this offense going again. And I could just see the Bears for some reason because they're the Bears just holding on to Nagy the whole season.
Yeah, it's a very Bears thing to do.
Yeah.
All right, last game on the slate here. We're looking at the Cleveland Browns heading up to Minnesota to go take on the Vikings, who are 2-point home dogs here in a 51.5-point total game. I think this is probably one of I'm definitely going to be watching this game out of all the 1 o'clock games. I typically have a few of those games on. This is one of the ones that I'm most interested in out of the offering. Obviously, a lot of fantasy value on both sides of the ball here. This is going to be a good dipstick game for Odell Beckham. Sort of a litmus test, if you will, to show if he's actually back or if last week was just a fluke. Who on the Brown side of the ball, outside of Odell Beckham, are we considering? And obviously, 51.5-point total. A lot of that's going to come from the running backs.
Yep.
And we'll talk about the running backs in a second. But from the wide receivers, who on the Brown side of the ball are we actually considering this game outside of Odell Beckham? We'll rope tight ends in here too.
Yeah, so
just pass catchers,
because that's literally all the place I'm looking at. It's Hooper if you need him, but the problem is they're using all their tight ends.
Yeah,
and if Hooper could Hooper needs to really break from the pack and establish himself as their tight end one because he hasn't done that yet this season, and that's what he was paid to do. So I was hoping for it, but I haven't really seen it. I mean, he bailed you out with a touchdown last week, but honestly, I think this is kind of a mirage game here. The point total, I would be hammering the under just because I think the Vikings, they have no defense yet. The Browns' defense looks legit, and the Vikings' offensive line looks suspect, and especially without Dalvin Cook. I could see this one getting away from the Vikings really early.
I mean, the Browns' defense did look exposable against even the Houston Texans for a while before Tyrod. The only team I would say they've looked legitimately strong against was obviously the Chicago Bears last week.
Yeah, it's for me, the Browns kind of remind me of honestly the Bucs this year, where the Bucs have all those pieces and they have all those names, and you think, oh, this should definitely be a good defense, but they haven't really shown it a lot this year. I mean, they've gotten some turnovers and they got into the quarterback a lot.
Their pass rush is excellent, but their secondary looks suspect.
Yeah, their secondary definitely looks exposable. I mean, you have guys like Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. I mean, I think that the Vikings are capable of putting up points. And I mean, Kirk's probably my favorite QB streamer of the week.
Fair. Like I said, I'm leaning away from this one. I just think I think this is gonna be a Nick Chubb game.
So do you? Well, I mean, I agree, but jumping to the quarterbacks before we talk about the running back room, because I think the running backs are the easiest to diagnose here. In a 51.5-point total, fairly close spread on this one. Obviously, I said that Kirk is my favorite streamer of the week. Where are you guys on Kirk? Are you guys streaming him this week? And on the flip side of the ball, are you streaming Baker this week in a high total?
I'm streaming Kirk. I'm not streaming Baker because Baker, he kind of reminds me of Ryan Tannehill last year when he came into this Tennessee offense.
Sure.
Where he's going to throw the ball a little bit and he's going to get some touchdowns, but he's not a high volume. Let me put it this way. Kirk isn't a high volume throw guy either, but he is more of a high volume throw guy, and I trust him to hit a higher ceiling than Baker.
I mean, he has been a high volume throw guy so far this year. So it's something to like about him. Yeah. Vitaly, what about you? I know you said that you're hammering the under in this game. Are you streaming either of these guys?
As I kind of just scrolled through the slate just to kind of see what other matchups there are. Honestly, this is not a great week for streamers. I feel like this a lot of the best matchups are going to the top guys.
Yep.
He might be in there just because of that, but he's like my 2 or 3. If I had to pick one, I think Darnold's probably my number 1 right now.
What about Derek? I mean, we'll talk about Derek Carr tomorrow, but because Derek Carr is another one of my. He's been having a very good start to the season. He's my second favorite streamer of the week at the quarterback position. Would you start Carr over him?
I never like having a streamer quarterback being the one going on Monday because you're kind of locked into him and you have to kind of pass up everything else.
Sure.
So there's a lot of. You really have to just be confident in it. The Chargers defense is solid, like I said, with good pass rush. But he's looked good enough that I'll put him in the conversation because Chargers been playing pace up. They're going to play pace up to keep up with them.
Okay.
And it's a high total, so I probably would put Carr over Kirk.
Okay, so you do have a couple guys over Kirk Cousins then this week.
Yeah, like I said, it's not a great week for streamers overall, but so I think Kirk slips in because of that.
Rounding it out with the running back room, obviously if Dalvin plays, you play him. If he doesn't, you play Alexander Mattison. I think this is going to be a great week for Nick Chubb. The Vikings are 17th against the run. Are we starting Kareem Hunt in this one?
I'm coming.
I mean, Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb have both been showing out to start the year, so I think it's.
Yeah, I think they're.
Yeah.
I think for me, they're both locked in starters.
Yeah, Kareem has shown he can produce this season with Nick Chubb. They both look great.
They're basically splitting the snaps right down the middle. They're both averaging about 50% of the snaps.
Yeah, like I said, I'm picturing this one being a classic Browns game where it's Nick Chubb destroys for 3 quarters, and then they're just like, all right, go ahead and sit, and he has like basically like a full game's worth in 3 quarters, and then Kareem closes it out.
Sure. All right, well, speaking of closing it out, that'll do it for the first half of the slate here. Join us tomorrow as we break down the second half, including the 4 o'clock Sunday night and Monday night games. And as always, if you have any questions, make sure to leave a comment down in the comments section or get at us on Twitter at the Fantasy 4-Pack, at the Fantasy 4-Pack or at the Fantasy 4P_Ian, at Senpai Koala, and at the Spoon. But that'll do it for us today. We'll see you all tomorrow. 40.